أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وخاتم الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls, purify your hearts and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Respected elders, scholars, sisters and brothers, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi Ta'ala wa Barakatuh. Lady TUKTAM, otherwise known as Najma Khatun, was the wife of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far and the mother of Imam Ali ibn Musa Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. An outstanding individual, a lady of nobility known to be amongst the best females at that time, a person who indeed established a number of principles and was praised by the Ahlulbayt. When studying the life of Lady TUKTAM, also known as Najma Khatun, you realize that she had more than 13 names. This now becomes a common occurrence for the mothers of the latter Imams. Mothers of, for example, Imam Al-Jawad, Imam Al-Hadi, Imam Al-Askari, and the Holy 12th Imam, may Allah's blessings and peace be upon them all. You find that they'll have many names. And this was indeed something that puzzles a number of people. In other words, how many names should an individual have? Most of us have one name. Why should an individual have 13 names? Why should they not be known by one name? There are a number of reasons for this. One was that these ladies were not necessarily out in the public much. They were protected by the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. And because, as we said, they were all slaves or servants, and perhaps many of them had similar complexion, many a times their names were confused. But the more likely reason is because the Ahlulbayt had a plan. The plan was to protect the identity of the 12th Holy Imam. In other words, Bani al-Abbas recognized that there will be an Imam who will come to save mankind. They worked hard to ensure that that particular Imam would not be born. In other words, they wanted to confuse Bani al-Abbas in order for them not to know who is the Imam of the 12th. And that's why you'll find some of these mothers of the Ahlul Bayt that, alhamdulillah, we have the honor to study and to recognize and at least learn some aspects of their lives. Sometimes some of them have names that others have. For example, TUKTAM, Najma, was also known as Khayzaran. But Khayzaran is the name of the mother of Imam Al-Jawad alayhi salam, as we will discuss tomorrow inshallah. She was also known as Sumana or Samana. Now Sumana was a name given to Imam Al-Jawad's mother as well as Imam Al-Hadi's mother. So these are interchangeable names between these glorious individuals. Indeed, for that particular purpose. Where was Lady Tuktam from? She's most likely from an area in modern-day Sudan, in Africa, known as Noba or Nuba. This is a very important area because we are told that ladies in Islam like Lady Fidda salamullahi alayha, Lady Maria al-Qibtiyya, the Copt, and a number of other prevalent individuals in Islamic history were from those regions, were from the Noba regions. The recognition that emerges, however, was that she was the first mother of the Ahlulbayt who had a dark complexion. In other words, she was darker than others. And as a result, today we have narrations that suggest that the 8th Holy Imam, Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, was darker than his fathers. His color, his skin color was darker. There are narrations that says, كَانَ شَدِيدُ السَّمَرَةِ. He was darker, in other words, in terms of his complexion. And this, unfortunately, has been looked at unfavorably in some literature in Islamic history. In other words, when you look at some descriptions relating to race, color, creed, or background, we find an unfortunate plague that existed, yes, for centuries. When it comes to historians, when it comes to narrators of hadith, they would often look down upon such traits. Yes. For example, how many of us have heard the story of the servant of Abu Dharr and later Sayyid al-Shuhada, peace and blessings be upon him, the 3rd Holy Imam, yes, by the name of John, yes. John, in Maqatil literature, the authors of Maqatil, often you read this, that when he fell before being martyred, he asked Imam al-Husayn, he said, my color is dark, my smell is pungent. So please make me lighter and make me smell better. This is unlikely to have been said by a man by the name of John, nor accepted by whom? A representative of Allah, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abu Abdullah, peace and blessings be upon him. In the idea that historians sometimes would present this image, that has a lot of racial prejudice around it, a lot of racism related to it, isn't it? There isn't a problem whatsoever if we accept the riwayat that says Imam Ridha alayhi salam was dark. What is the problem in doing so? As today, many of us are in a better position to accept. However, back in the time, they would find this difficult. They would not accept this idea. I tell you today, when you go in certain countries and you saw drawings of the Imams, you've seen these drawings? There are people who ask, what is the fiqhi position of these drawings? There are those, alhamdulillah, these drawings have not found their way in Western mosques and Husayniyas and Imam Bargas. This is a great blessing of Allah, yes? Whereas in some countries today, you'll find that people have them everywhere. They say, this is Imam Ali alayhi salam, this is Imam Ridha alayhi salam. And I've seen one which has all the 12 Imams. The best use of Photoshop. Yes? In the recognition that slight changes in hair or the way that an individual, one of the Imams would look. These particular drawings are not ones that we recommend, that people should necessarily have, nor believe that this is how the Imams looked. It is possible that it's an artistic impression of how the Imams looked, but unfortunately some people begin to believe that the Imam actually looked this way, and sadly begin to attribute a number of physical features to the Imams that we may not necessarily be sure were the case. When it comes to the marriage of this holy lady, this blessed lady, the trend that I would like you now to be fully aware of, and now you should be, inshallah, recognizing after hearing some of these lives of these illustrious individuals, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala arranges for them to be married to the Imams. That it was a plan. It's all carefully orchestrated by Rabbul Alameen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ensure that these individuals end up with the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam. And the story of Tuktam, Najma Khatun, was very similar. In which way? We are told that Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, peace and blessings be upon him, in the book Dala'ilul A'imma by a man by the name of Tabari, but he was Shi'i, not the Tabari who is Sunni. In the book Dala'ilul A'imma, the following narration is found. Because there are two narrations that tell us how she ended up marrying Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. One narration says that the seventh Holy Imam said to this man by the name of Husham ibn Ahmad, he said, there is a man who's coming to sell some slaves. I would like to go with you to buy a particular slave. They went to this individual who's come from the land of what? From Africa, from North Africa. They go to him, they say, how many ladies do you have? Bondswomen. He says 9. He brings them out. Tomorrow we'll discuss slavery. We'll talk about the position of the religion of Islam, how the Ahlulbayt dealt with this particular notion, and how, for example, modern day terrorists have misapplied and indeed abused this idea. The recognition is that the Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam said, no, it's none of these 9. Do you have someone else? He said, yes, but she's sick. Subhanallah, this is often you see those who paid attention yesterday and were not thinking about the delicious iftar will recognize what? Will recognize that these ladies often are hidden. They were not necessarily always out there. Imams had to choose them and insist for them to be brought out. Imam Al-Kadhim said, no, it's none of these ladies I'm looking for. The man insisted, no, I'm not bringing you out, the one who is sick. Imam said to this particular individual, Husham ibn Ahmad, he said, tomorrow come back and give him whatever he wishes for that lady. The man came back the next day and said, where was that woman, that female that was sick? She's brought out, Husham purchases her. When he brings her to the Imam alayhi salam, the ashab, the companions of the seventh Holy Imam are told the following. He says that, Wallahi mashtaraytu hadhihi al-jariya illa bi amri Allahi wa wahyih. By Allah, I did not purchase this lady except by the permission of Allah and His command. This is according to the narration. Then he tells them what happened. He says, I saw my grandfather and my father in my dream. And they said to me, Ya Musa, لَيَكُونَنَّ لَكَ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْجَارِيَةُ خَيْرِ أَهْلِ الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَكَ. From this lady, you will be given the best of God's creation after you. ثُمَّ أَمَرَنِي إِذَا وَلَدْتَهُ أَنْ أُسَمِّيهِ عَلِيًّا. Then I was commanded that when he was born, I name him as Ali. Yes, this is one story that's given in the book Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha by Sheikh al-Saduq. Another one is what? Is the honorable mother of Imam Al-Kadhim. What's her name? Hamida al-Musaffat. Yes, Hamida al-Musaffat is amongst these glorious ladies. The least thing we can do this Ramadan is memorize their names. The least thing, yes? In order that we honor the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam, yes? Without a shadow of a doubt, when you recite Ziyarah of Musa ibn Ja'far, yes, and you honor his mother, Hamida al-Musaffat, by remembering her name, this pleases the Imam. Yes, because they were beloved to the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam, great role models for both males and females. Hamida salamullahi alayha, this honorable lady that we spoke about, this faqihah, this knowledgeable individual, what did she do? She gifted Tuktam, Najma Khatun, to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. She would say to him, Ya bunay, inna Tuktam jariya. Oh my son, Tuktam is a slave. Ma ra'aytu jariya qat afdalu minha. I did not see a slave lady better than her. وَلَسْتُ أَشُكُّ أَنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى سَيُظْهِرُ نَسْلَهَا. I have no doubt that it's from her that you will be blessed with a child. وَقَدْ وَهَبْتُهَا لَكَ فَاسْتَوْصِ بِهَا خَيْرًا. And I gift her to you, look after her. So we have two narrations. One says Imam Al-Kadhim purchased her. One says Hamida, his own mother, gave this lady to Imam Al-Kadhim. Which one should we take? Both. There is a way to reconcile, and that is what? That Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam purchased her, then gave her to his mother to what? To ensure that she is taught, that she is educated and trained in the best possible way, and when she was ready, she would gift it back to the seventh Holy Imam, in order for this blessed marriage to indeed take place. And that's why we find that Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam named her Tuktam. Her original name was Najma. Why did Imam Al-Kadhim name her Tuktam? Tuktam means the name to be hidden, the name to be concealed. Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam wanted her name concealed. Why? Because all the Imams after Imam Al-Ridha were known as Abna al-Ridha. Imam Al-Hadi, Imam Al-Jawadi, Imam Al-Askari. They were all known as Abna al-Ridha. Yes? Because of this particular association. So Imam alayhi salam wanted her name, what? Wanted her name concealed, and therefore he gave her Tuktam. Yet he also gave her another name. Imagine when a Ma'soom gives you a title. What an honor. What a brilliant, matter of pride for an individual to be given a title by a Ma'soom. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, when she gave birth to the holy 8th Imam, called her Tahira, the pure one. Subhanallah. What a praise to a lady who gives birth to an Imam of the Ahlulbayt alayhum salam. And that is why we are told that she, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, would praise his own mother and would say during the pregnancy, she used to hear, كانت تسمع في منامها تسبيحا وتهليلا وتحميدا في بطنها. She used to hear the glorification of Allah from her womb. Yes. And this was a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had indeed given to her. But it was, without a shadow of a doubt, a matter of great celebration on the 11th of Dhul Qa'dah in the year 148 after Hijrah. And according to some riwayat, 153 after Hijrah. Some say earlier, 143. But Sheikh Al-Kulayni, Allah Ta'ala maqamah, says 148. And many historians agree to this. The birth of the holy 8th Imam was what? Was on this date, according to many narrations. Herself, she comes and describes how she gave birth to Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam. She says, فَلَمَّا وَضَعْتُهُ وَقَعَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ وَاضَعًا يَدَيْهِ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ. When I gave birth to him, he placed his hands on the ground. You can see a similarity with what we described yesterday, yes? Similar description for the birth of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far as well. And these, when they're described by different people, all point to the fact that what? It's a common occurrence amongst the Ahlulbayt, amongst the Imams of the Ahlulbayt. She then goes on to say, رَافِعًا رَأْسَهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ يُحَرِّكُ شَفَتَيْهِ. He lifted his head to the heavens. He moved his what? His blessed mouth. كَأَنَّهُ يَتَكَلَّمُ. He began to speak. فَدَخَلَ إِلَيَّ أَبُوهُ مُوسَى بْنَ جَعْفَرَ. Says at that moment, his father, Musa ibn Ja'far, entered. فَقَالَ هَنِيئًا لَكِ يَا نَجْمَةً. Congratulations, O Najma. Now he calls her what? Najma. Yes? كَرَامَةُ رَبِّكَ. Allah has honored you. فَنَاوَلْتُهُ إِيَّاهُ. I gave him the young baby. And he was wrapped في خرقة بيضاء, in white cloth. فأذن في أذنه الأيمن. He recited adhan in his right ear. وأقام في الأيسر. Then he recited إقامة in his left ear. ودعا بماء الفرات فحنكه به. Please understand this. There is a recommended practice for young babies, and that is known as tahnik. Tahnik means what? You get a little bit of water from Furat. It's unlikely that you can get some in the grocery stores in Vancouver. Yes? Or possibly some small tiny amount from the turba, from the soil of the grave of Imam Al-Husayn alayhi salam. Or a very small amount of date, a tiny amount, and you place it under the lip of the baby. Yes, this is the practice of Ahlulbayt. Istihbab is found, narration after narration, that this is what they did to their children. And therefore we follow the sunnah of Ali Muhammad. And that's why Imam Musa ibn Ja'far did the same for Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. He placed part of the Furat water, under his lips. And then he says, ثُمَّ قَالَ خُذِيهِ فَإِنَّهُ بَقِيَّةُ اللَّهِ فِي أَرْضِهِ. Subhanallah. Take him, for he is the representative of Allah on this earth. Interesting that today we call the holy 12th Imam Baqiyatullah, because the Quran says, Baqiyatullahi khayrun lakum in kuntum mu'mineen. What is remaining from the representative of Allah is best for you if you are truly believers. that all the Imams are Mahdiyun. Yes? In Ziyarat Warith, what do we recite? Ashhadu annaka al-Imam al-Hadi al-Mahdi, isn't it? And I see some people doing this because they don't understand that this actually is in reference to the third Imam, not in reference to the 12th Imam. Yes? That we are calling Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam al-Mahdi, the one whom people were guided by. Yes. Through him, people attained indeed guidance. We find that Lady Najma Tuktam, salamullahi alayha, was so virtuous, so honorable, that Imam Ridha alayhi salam praises her by saying this. He says, وَكَانَتْ ذَا فَضْلٍ وَمُتَعَبِّدًا وَذَاكِرَ لِلَّهِ كَثِيرًا. She loved ibadah. She loved worship. She enjoyed the remembrance of Allah. She was amongst the ones who remember Allah on a frequent basis. The Quran says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, yes, اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا. Oh, you who believe, remember Allah on a frequent basis. Lady Najma Tuktam Khatun was amongst those who demonstrated this, was continuously in the state of the remembrance of God. She enjoyed it, she loved it, she recognized in it there is what? Purity of the heart, salvation for the soul, success in dunya and akhirah. And this is an important lesson from this lady. And that is what? You and I need to use the month of Ramadan as a station to inculcate the culture of mustahabbat, I call. Please understand this. What is the culture of mustahabbat? I ask you, do we recite more dua in Ramadan or outside Ramadan? What do you think? No doubt more in Ramadan. Do we recite Quran more in Shahr Ramadan or outside Shahr Ramadan? Definitely. Do we recite Salah more in Shahr Ramadan or outside Shahr Ramadan? Definitely more Shahr. When we come to dhikr of Allah, yes, when it comes to, for example, certain tasbih, so certain remembrance, nights of Qadr, other nights, there are specific a'mal, we recite more in this blessed month. Do you agree? Why? Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala wants to infuse, wants to plant in our hearts the spirit of recommended deeds, mustahabbat. Most of us know about certain mustahabbats in the Islamic literature. For example, Tasbihat Fatimatul Zahra. For example, staying in wudu throughout the day and sleeping in the state of wudu, because we are told your bed turns into a masjid in which Allah is worshipped, and if you die in the state of your sleep, you die a shaheed, a martyr. Doesn't cost you much, yes, to perform wudu just before you go to sleep. We have mustahabbat, like for example, what? Like for instance, Salatul Layl, Salatul Ghufayla. These ideas and notions exist within Islamic literature. When it comes to recommended deeds, somebody might ask, why should I do them? Okay, I'll get thawab in akhirah. But is there any more benefit than reward that I would get? Why is there so many advice or recommendations from the Ahlulbayt to follow in the footsteps of Ahlulbayt and their mothers like Najma Tuktam Khatum, who loved the remembrance of Allah? Why? Number one, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am grateful to certain people. Can you imagine today, if you get a call from someone that you love and you revere, like a marja' al-taqleed, he calls you and say, I would like to say thank you. You feel so good. Someone that you revere is thanking you. Yes? Imagine if Rabbul Alameen says thank you. This is unimaginable. Something beyond comprehension. The Quran says, if you do mustahabbat, He will thank you. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا, yes, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. Allah says, if you do extra, He is grateful. Subhanallah, how amazing is this Lord? How merciful is Rabbul Alameen? We are the beneficiaries. He doesn't get anything. Yet He says, if you do more, I am grateful. Because He wants success for you and I. He wants you and I to attain paradise. In dunya, He wants us to be individuals who are what? Who are alive. Say to me, if I don't do mustahabbat, I am dead? Yes. Because Imam Zayn al-Abidin al-Sajjad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, comes forward and says, Sayyidi wa Mawlai, بِذِكْرِكَ عَاشَ قَلْبِي, in this magnificent, majestic, mesmerizing supplication that people outside the school of Ahlulbayt have not discovered. And those inside school of Ali Muhammad only read on the nights of Qadr. Dua Abu Hamza is not only for nights of Qadr. Throughout the year it should be read. It's long, but take certain parts and recite in your own language. There's nothing wrong with reciting it in English, in Gujarati, in Swahili, in Kutchi, in all these languages, in Urdu. How can I forget Urdu? Yes? In the recognition that these, as long as you are aware of what you are reciting, they will uplift you. Now I ask you, this notion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being grateful is in itself much inspirational to do mustahabbat, to have a mustahabbat daily program. Another reason is when we do recommended deeds that Allah has said is not wajib, we are showing our love to Allah. I love to remember Him because these mustahabbat are ibadah, are acts of worship. Yes? Allah has not said it's wajib to do Salatul Layl or Salatul Ghufayla or these particular a'mal that you and I are recommended to do on a daily basis. Like the fifth holy Imam says, recite 50 ayat of the Quran every day. Outside the Shahr Ramadan, yes, Shahr Ramadan, alhamdulillah, we recite an entire chapter, most of us, per day. Outside the month of Ramadan, sometimes the Quran is neglected. The Quran is not recited, is not pondered upon, isn't it? An expression of love is mustahabbat. Similarly, what else does it do? It breaks the back of shaitan and creates a barrier between you and shaitan. Do you know why? Because shaitan now begins to focus to dissuade you from doing mustahabbat, not wajibat. If you only stick to wajib, shaitan has one frontier. Don't pray fajr. Delay your dhuhr and asr. Now you're starting to perform nawafil. Now you're doing extra deeds. Shaitan's work is even worse now, much more. He's now trying to tell you, no, you're tired today. Forget, for example, this tasbih. Forget this recommended salah for the beginning of the month. Don't need to do it. Don't do ghuslul jumu'ah. You don't need. Yes. So it creates this protection for you against the temptations of the shaitan. Some of the ulama have said it's wings that enables your wajib amal to be accepted. Subhanallah. We mentioned this, isn't it? That sometimes our salah may not be accepted if we have not focused, if there is no khushu'. But mustahabbat, especially the nawafil, complement it or support it, strengthen indeed the wajib deeds. And that's why it is something of great importance to utilize the base of Shahr Ramadan to have something that we do on a regular basis. It's better to do something on a continuous basis than to do it only at a short period of time. Yes. If we have a habit of continuing to perform mustahabbat, to being of those of great dhikr of Allah outside the month of Ramadan, this comes highly recommended. Someone asks a question, Tuktam, this lady, is there a controversy about her? Yes, there is a slight controversy because we have a hadith, Sheikh Saduq alallahu ta'ala maqamah, he narrates, he says that when she gave birth to Imam Ridha, she said, please, I want a lady to breastfeed him because I am not getting enough time for tasbih and ibadah. Someone says, how is this acceptable? That this honorable lady, yes, we've established that she loved the remembrance of God, yes? It raises the heart, it gives tranquility to the soul, isn't it? To the qalb, ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. But breastfeeding an imam, a hujjah of Allah on this earth, in itself is the ibadah, in itself is the worship of God, isn't it? So how is it that she would indeed ask for someone to breastfeed the imam so that she would be busy and she would get more time for ibadah and indeed salah? And that's why it's a narration that has been disputed and some may not necessarily accept due to the status and the nobility of this great lady. Someone asks, other than Imam Al-Ridha, did Najma Khatun Tuktam have other children? Yes, it's very important you know her other children because I am sure that 100% of you here know at least one other child of hers, and that is Fatima Ma'sooma Salamullahi alayha. How many of us have gone to Qum and have paid respect to this great lady? Yes, Allah has honored her, Allah has favored her, isn't it? But we don't know her mother. Her mother is Najma. Her mother is Tuktam. Yes, Tuktam is the mother of Fatima al-Ma'sooma Salamullahi alayha, who's buried in where? In Qum al-Muqaddasa. Who else is the son of this honorable lady? It's a man that an entire city in Iraq is named after. Please focus on this story so that we are inspired by the hard work and dedication of the sons and the children of the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, according to narrations, had how many? Had 37 sons and daughters. How many? 37. 19 of them were boys and 18 were girls, according to ulama like Sheikh Al-Mufid. Therefore, he's the number one imam who had what? More children. Second was Amir al-Mu'mineen, who according to riwayat had 27 boys and girls. So Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, and today that's why you find the Sad al-Musawiyin, yes, there are many around the world. It's argued that there are more than the Hassaniyin or Husayniyin, for example, the Sada, the Sayyids, because of the fact that what? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam had so many sons and daughters. And that's why you find that it is perhaps difficult to accept the narrations or the suggestion rather from some ulama or some speakers that Imam alayhi salam was 15 years in the dungeons. In thorough research, academic, rigorous, rational, as well as based on the teachings of many of our ulama and their research, it is likely that Imam Musa ibn Ja'far was in the prisons for 4 or 5 years. That is the most that he was, given all the other factors that needs discussion and analysis at another date. But one of his sons from Najma Khatun was a great man by the name of Qasim ibn Musa ibn Ja'far. Salamullahi ala Qasim. What is the story of Qasim? Because it's related to Najma. Qasim, like many other sons and daughters of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, lived in a very difficult time. Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam was being persecuted. Imam was taken from one dungeon to another. Therefore, his sons and daughters dispersed. Even later, after his martyrdom, we find that, for example, Fatima al-Ma'suma, she would go to try and catch up with Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam in Merv in Khurasan. And she ended up in Qom and sadly passed away there, isn't it? Qasim was amongst those who had to disperse and save his life. In other words, they migrated, they left Medina, because Harun al-Abbasi alayhi la'inullah and all the Umayyads and the Abbasids, yes, and be careful to admire anyone who praises the Umayyads and the Abbasids, yes, because they are individuals who are what? Who killed the Imams of the Ahlulbayt. And wallah, I say there is nothing good about Umayyads and Abbasids. Yes? Today we recognize what? We recognize the following, that the children of the Imams, many of them had to disperse and go so many different places to save their lives. Qasim, he went to an area about 30 miles from Hilla, modern day Iraq. Yes? He went there looking to save his life alone. Yes? He saw 2 ladies washing clothes next to a river. He came to them. He heard their conversation. One of them said to the other, La wa sahibul ghadir. She said, I'm telling you, by the man who is the subject of the story of Ghadir. He became happy. Yes? He looked at her and said, who is this man? She said, my master Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He became happy. He said, I am here as a visitor. She said, very well. She took him to her father, who was the sheikh of the village. And he didn't ask him any questions. He said, very well, it's customary in Arab culture. If you've come somewhere, you stay for 3 days. Nobody should ask you why you're here, how long you're staying. After 3 days, Qasim, the son of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, the son of Najma Khatun, Tuktam, yes, comes and says to this sheikh, he says, you know, I want to stay with you. I love your village. Can you give me a role? I want to feed the people from water. So I will go to the river and bring water. Saqi he will be, the person who feeds and brings water to the village from the river. He says, very well. He begins to work in the village. He says, I cannot take sadaqah. Yes. And so he begins to establish himself. But people begin to see the nobility. He's an abid. Yes. He's a righteous individual. Because the sons of the Imam alayhi salam are like this. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far had a son by the name of Muhammad Al-Abid. Brilliant man who used to worship Allah, and people used to say that every night we hear him performing wudu. Muhammad Al-Abid had a son by the name of Ibrahim Al-Mujab. Today, if you go to Karbala, may Allah grant you tawfiq to visit the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada. As you enter the shrine, there is a shrine on your left-hand side. It's called the shrine of Ibrahim al-Mujab. Many of the Saad al-Musawiyin, in fact, all of them are descendants of Ibrahim al-Mujab. Ibrahim is the son of Sayyid Mohammed Al-Abid, who is the son of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. Yes? These were great people who loved ibadah, would do it wholeheartedly, not forced. Do it out of love of God. Yes. So Qasim would worship Allah, Salatul Layl, everything. And once there was an attack of the village, he protected the village. When he protected the village, the sheikh of the village, the father of that lady whom he saw at the beginning, came to him. He said, I'm very impressed by you, and I want you to marry my daughter. He said, very well. He said, can you tell me who you are? He said, please excuse me, I cannot tell you. He says, very well. So he marries that young lady. Yes, and they have a child, a daughter, according to riwayat, they have a daughter. Sadly, Qasim falls ill when his daughter perhaps is about, maybe 5, 6 or less, yes. Qasim was 3 years younger than Imam Ridha alayhi salam, or 2 years. He was born in the year 150 after Hijrah, yes. Imam Ridha was most likely born 148 after Hijrah. So the riwayat tells us, when he fell ill, the doctor told him that you're going to leave this world, you're going to die. He felt very saddened, and he gathered his family members, including his father-in-law. His father-in-law said, you're going to die, and your daughter doesn't even know who her family is. Can you now tell me who you are? He said, I will tell you. I am the son of Musa ibn Ja'far. I am one of the extended Ahlulbayt. The father fell on the ground, started to slap his face. He said, you are the son of my Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, and I did not know, and I let you serve us. How dare I? He said, don't worry. Yes. But I have one thing that I would like you to do for me. He said, what? He said, this daughter of mine, next year you will go to Hajj, you and this daughter of my wife. Go to this house in Medina and and show her to my mother. My mother would love to see my son or daughter. When he passed away, Qasim was buried in that area. Today it's known as the city of Qasim in Iraq. He has a beautiful shrine, yes? The next year, they went to Medina. They went to the house. They let that young girl, the daughter of Qasim, the granddaughter of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, outside the door. They knocked on the door. Who opened the door? Najma. Tuktam. She opened the door. The moment she looked at that young daughter, she began to cry. She said, you remind me of my son Qasim. You must be the daughter of Qasim. She hugged her. She welcomed the family. Riwayat tell us she lived for only 3 days after this. This honorable lady died 3 days after she met her granddaughter, the daughter of Qasim, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, yes? And she was buried either in Jannatul Baqi' or what is known as Mashra'at Ibrahim. Ibrahim, Maria al-Qibtiyya, has an area in Medina where some of the noble ladies are buried, and it is said that indeed she is buried there, and highlights how patient they were, how much difficulty and hardship they faced. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us all with the Ahlulbayt and the mothers of the Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam. As far as the spiritual tip for this evening is concerned, and that is, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam once said to a man by the name of Suma'a or Samma'a, he said to him, after hearing that he used profanity and words that are inappropriate for a believer to use, he said to him, why did you say this? He said, Yabna Rasulillah, this man has oppressed me and said the same thing about me. According to the riwayah, Imam al-Sadiq said, you have done worse than him. You have committed something greater than him. Go and seek his forgiveness. Because my Shia are not those who use such language. Today, when you and I are fasting, often we speak less. Do you agree? If you speak more in Ramadan than you do outside Ramadan, then please see us afterwards, we have a discussion. Because it's likely that most of us, due to fasting, we say only things we need to say outside our workplace, for example, yes? fasting drains us, or we are aware that we should be controlling our tongues because we are told the fast of the tongue is a second level, isn't it? Or at least one of the highest levels of siyam, siyamul jawarih, isn't it? Then there is the siyamul qalb. Now, what is the lesson being taught here? Sadly, some of our youth and others, they learn from movies in Netflix and soap operas and others, this profanity, this letter word and that letter word, and they start using it randomly and all over the place. They think it's okay. Swearing, using vulgar language. This is not from the akhlaq of Ahlulbayt. The tip of this evening is that the month of Ramadan should be an opportunity to say no and to stop these practices and to stop saying these kind of words. It is not for us. Even if society uses them, even if it's at after 9 p.m. you can say it on the television, it doesn't mean that there is an open invitation for us to say it. And some unfortunately use these words in front of their children, or they label the children with it, or they attack the children by swearing using these words. Yes, let us utilize the month of Ramadan. Like Amir al-Mu'mineen once passed by somebody, he was constantly talking. He left him, came back again, saw him constantly talking, and then looked at him and says, Ya hadha, oh man, give your angels a break. Constantly writing, yes? Give them a break. In the month of Ramadan, we've given them a break. We need to extend this by ensuring that we are very careful of how and what words we use. Finally, the fiqhi reminder, and it's a reminder, I am sure. These are not something new for most of us. It's just a reminder for you and I. And that is, there are some professions which involve great labor and hard work during the month of Ramadan. For example, where they require hydration. They require to drink. Otherwise, they can't focus. They lose concentration. Like if you're a pilot, or for example, if you're a physician, a doctor. I'm not saying everybody has to. There are some people who know themselves. Because of dehydration, they begin to lose focus. I myself used to practice as a pharmacist. I know very well. Yes, although pharmacists may be able to get on with it, but sometimes if you feel that you cannot check the medications properly and there are lives of people at risk, what do you do then? Some mu'mineen think it's a green card to break your fast and bismillah, yes, have a biryani and everything. Yes, morning, breakfast, lunch. No, you break your fast with only that which is necessary to give you the focus and the attention, like a bit of sip of water. That's enough for you, khalas. You are not supposed to then continuously eat. Even though you have broken your fast, the ruling is this, that you should only consume that which gives you the energy to continue your day, and after the month of Ramadan, you do it as qada. There's no kafara. But you know yourself better than anyone else. And so you know the limits, whether you can withstand it and be patient, because the Quran says, وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It's best for you. Yes? And a final reminder as well for ladies, if they're going through certain time of the month and they're not fasting, this doesn't mean it gives them the freedom to eat in front of others. There is a hurma for the month of Ramadan. There is a sacredness for a traveler, for somebody who is sick. We're not supposed to eat in front of others and openly, yes, jahran, so it's okay, I'm going to eat because I'm not fasting. Neither should we judge someone who's eating as well. Because I know in the UK what happened once in the street, this is real, in one of the cities where there's a high Muslim population, they saw someone eating. So they went to him and said, brother, it's the month of Ramadan. He looked at them and said, I'm Sikh, what are you talking about? You know, I'm not Muslim. Oh, you looked like a Muslim, you had a beard. It's not us to be the haram police and say to someone, why are you eating? Why are you eating? Why are you eating? This is not the akhlaq of the religion of Islam. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala bless you all with the barakah of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.